Good day, good morning, and good evening, Commanders. Today we'll be taking a look at the new Omen map. It's the first mirrored map that was ever released to the game. And today we'll be explaining what are like the general advantages, what you should play for on both sides, which side is better, if there even is a better side, and how you generally want to play on this map. So let's get straight into it. We're here on the red side. It's a mirror match 5e versus 5e. Uh, Typically, to be honest, there are disadvantages to both sides. For example, red has this here in echo. If you take a look, so red can send his CV up like this. That's a bit too thick, my bad. Um, Red can send his CV like this down this road and cap this without any issue, without having to pull his CV back. Whereas blue over here, whereas blue over here cannot do that. As you can see here, blue has to go like this way, and then has to pull back his CV and then send it forward again in order to cap this. So it is a bit different. Now, there's also some cover disadvantages for the flanks. We'll get into that really quickly. However, there is some things to say. So there are some powerful sight lines here in the middle. So as you can see here, if you take a look, these two buildings for red offer quite an advantage in LOS. They watch basically down this entire thing, and it's pretty good for red. This is a very good position. You can put an ADGM here, and you can surprise your opponent down in Bravo because they cannot use this road. Blue cannot use that road. Another thing is that there's a church, and as you can see here, blue has access to a church, which, if you take a look at what you can see, well, not much, but it does offer a bit of intel, and kind of locks down this, as you can see here, and a bit of this. So this church belongs to, or rather high-rise belongs to blue, but then red, as a trade-off, gets these powerful sightlines. So that's kind of the way that the cookie crumbles down here in the middle, and blue gets this church here that overlooks this. So that's kind of how it works when it comes to sightlines in the middle. Then there's also these sides over here that you see, and so red gets this, and blue gets this side. Technically, that's realistically how it goes most of the time, in my opinion. Um, in my opinion, uh, I think Reds is a bit more powerful because if you take a look here, Reds cuts all of this entire area off. Just take a look at all of this that Red cuts off. And then red can also play for this forest here that blue wants to get into. If blue wants to advance, red cuts that off as well and can play for it. Whereas blues, so if you take a look at blues, yes, it does see a lot similarly to reds, but it doesn't cut off anything vital. As you can see here, this is like very close to this intersection, and so is this, but there's no like mega important intersection here. Again, obviously, yes, this road is pretty important, and yes, technically you can go this way, but most of the time, pathing will just take you through here. This is a dead road, by the way. Just don't get baited by this. This road, it's like it doesn't exist because it doesn't go through this forest as you would imagine it would go. It just ends here for some reason. Um, I don't know. But yeah, but most of the time you're going to be taking this road. And yes, similarly, you can take this road as blue. However, blue also wants to use this road sometimes. And now, like I said, this does exist for red as well. But red, the way that red gets to this in the first place is quite a bit different. You're never really going to be going down here because it's basically the same distance. If you check, it's basically the same distance. Red can go through here as well. So it is a bit different, and I do think that red's building here is a bit more powerful. So to recap, this is reds and this is blues, and personally I think red is just ever so slightly more powerful because it does give you a bit more influence, and in my opinion it is a bit harder to kick out. I think even though they are technically the same building complex, I think it is a bit harder to kick out. Um, there's just more cover here, and this is all open, and you can always retreat into here, and there's cover behind. Likewise, there is cover here, but that doesn't really matter. It's not that big. As you can see, he's gonna have to make some space between them to go back into cover here as blue. So like I said, basically the same. However, there are some disadvantages and advantages for both. Now, generally, I mean, it's up to you to see what you like more. Would you like to have that better sight line, or would you like to have this high rise, that covers a bit about the same area? It's personal preference as to what you feel more comfortable with. Obviously, you don't pick sides. You never pick sides, but I'm just saying that is what you want to play for on these sides. And like I said, Reds, this is a bit more powerful. Now, getting into the defense of the side zones. So you can see that basically when red is attacking this, there's a lot of cover. You can see here that there's this, there's this, there's this, and there's this. And then the road down here is interrupted by that cover and by this kind of angle. So it's pretty easy for blue, or rather, well, technically for blue it is easier to defend this because there is so much cover that you can stack AT in. So technically, yes, for blue this is easier to defend, but this also, so that makes it harder for red to attack. But if that, likewise, the same way it works, just the other way around. If red does push this early and gets into here, good luck pushing red out. You're never going to be able to do it unless red makes a big mistake or sacrifices that side, or that flank, or that push, whatever it may be. If red plays it perfectly and blue plays it perfectly, but red is in here, blue is not pushing red out. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, Over here, there's quite of a different situation. So red is defending in Gulf and attacking in Delta. And so let's just draw that. Red is defending in Gulf and attacking in Delta. Blue is the other way around, defending in Delta, attacking in Gulf. The way that it works here for Gulf is red gets this building, which you'd think looks down this road, and I mean, technically it does, but it gets a bit glitchy, and not a lot of the time. So you can see that the LOS is generated from here. So realistically, the only amount of LOS that you're going to get from this building is, well, this. And this is pretty powerful, so don't get me wrong. This is pretty powerful. But um, at the trade-off of you kind of just let your opponent in, you kind of just let blue in here, and there's nothing you can do. Yes, there's cover here and here, right? But this is generally pretty much easily overrun. It's not a lot of cover, and it's not wide at all. So if you take a look, it's not wide, meaning that wherever an infantry squad may be, it's always going to be able to get shot at, no matter what the situation may be. So, getting into Gulf is both easier and harder at the same time. It's easier because there's not much cover here, but that they make up for it with this building, which looks down here. Now, that building does exist over here on the left side as well, but it does not look. It does not affect the gameplay in the same way. Now, it does kind of affect what's going on here, but that applies to this building as well, except for not as much to the side, because there is this cover here, whereas you can take a look, I mean, there it is, but it can see this kind of up here. It's a bit different, but in the end, it works out for both sides. So like we said, it does make it so that red technically has a harder time defending, because blue is just going to be able to roll over this cover, which is very light. And generally, lone buildings like this are pretty easy to break through. I mean, you just put a tank or two, like we see here. I mean, although I'm the opposite side. You just put a tank or two, and you can shoot whatever ADGM is put into this building. So it's not that hard to overcome. But because it is harder, because it is easier to push in for blue, likewise, once blue gets into here, it's easier for red to kick blue out. Now, that doesn't always go to plan, because this is pretty open, and this is all pretty open as well. So if blue does get all of this cover, you can kind of wave your zone goodbye if blue plays it well. So, you can allow blue into here and into here and into here. But if you allow blue into this or this or this or this or this, you're going to lose. You need to keep this in order to have a baseline to go off on. And it would be most ideal if you keep this. Generally, blue can get into here, um, but also um, it's not that easy to achieve. And when it is, and when blue does get into there, there's usually counterplay from these two forests, which can work together to kick blue out of here, of course. Um, so yeah, it's dynamic and it works pretty weird. Um, the general strategy for this map, I think, for both sides is I mean, as you can see here, what I'm doing is attack both flanks, and have a slight sort of middle force in the middle to go for both of the sides wherever they need to reinforce. As you can see here, I have something in the middle to not make it instantly lost if there are enemy vehicles, but at the same time, there's also not much here, so most of the attack is focused on the left and right sides. And as you can see here, I'm blitzing down both of these sides pretty fast. Um, Back to my view. So, like we said, red is going to have a harder time getting into here, but as you can see here, once I'm in here, it's going to be pretty hard for blue to kick me out. Now, slight oversight on my part is that there's infantry in here, and I did not expect infantry in here, because the way that I thought about it is, why would my enemy put infantry on a flank where you're supposed to attack? You know, infantry is not mobile. This infantry is not going to get to India, so then what's the point of it in the first place, right? I'd rather have tanks if I was blue in this situation. I mean, as you can see, this infantry just gets insta-minced, and it doesn't exist anymore. So that's, 130 points that were just thrown down the drain. Um, so like I said, the general idea for both sides is to attack both flanks, and the middle, you can kind of leave it to rot, to be honest. Um, I've of all the games that I've played of Omen, there's usually not much of an advantage of having the middle. And usually, both sides can get back into the middle not really easily. I'd say it's easier for blue to get back in than red. But it's generally fair because I mean it is a mirrored map. The middle is honestly, I think it's pretty worthless. I mean, yes, here I am sending tanks, but this is because I've already got both of the flanks, and the idea is to strike, well, my idea at least, was to strike the flanks, and then and then whilst the enemy is rerouting units and attention to this, strike the middle, and then once I beat them over here and here, get this and take the entire map. That's kind of how it goes. Um, but yeah, um, so I take the middle here, and you'll see that it doesn't really offer me that much of an advantage. It just gets me a bit more points. So that's why I suggest leaving the middle, because it won't really get you much. It really does not give you much. It's sad to see that the middle of a map is pretty useless, but it's a one tick. So if you take a look, this is a two tick. This is a two tick. Everything else is a one. So technically, if you go for if you have to choose between which side you're gonna stack the hardest. So if you have that option to just, for example, you're not comfortable with playing this split, and against some divisions you should definitely not be. For example, DIVMOB on this map literally is king. It feels like this map was literally made for the new DIVMOB division. I cannot express how much pain and suffering you are going to have facing DIVMOB on this map if the DIVMOB user is playing it correctly. Of course, if they're, I don't know, if they're using, I don't know, iHawks and are using the 55-point tanks first instead of 40-point tanks, and if they're not using recon to rush and everything, if they're not playing to the advantages of the division, of course it's not going to work. But if they are, and if they're playing DivMob perfectly, and the way that you're supposed to spam with it, this is bad for me. The way that you're supposed to spam with it, which is the man guns, so the man Z133s, or the 311s. I'm not sure. I think it's 311s. The AA little guns that go around, the scimitars, the 40.12 ROF guys that have massive amounts of suppression. All of that combined, plus the Provincios that you can spam, makes it a very, very powerful division. And on this map, it's bred to kill, to be honest. It is literally born to kill. It really, you can't really stop it on this map, because wherever you're going, DivMob will just throw a bunch of units in your face and can react almost instantaneously, can secure any one of these zones that it takes almost instantaneously, because everything's like 40 points. So it's generally a pain trying to play against DivMob on this map. So against DivMob, what I'd recommend on this map, or against divisions that are fast like that just go meow and take everything, or instantly secure anything and everything that they touch, what I'd suggest is playing a bit more solid and not splitting your forces, because if you play a solid game, if you go for two sides like this and leave this one, you can redirect units pretty fast from one side to the other. And this is the definition of a solid game. This is what it means to play solid, and also obviously not make any mistakes, or rather not do anything stupid or throw your units into a fireball. That's solid play. This is not solid play. That's not solid. Why? Well, because if one side gets completely sent back to the Stone Age, what's the other one gonna do? Yeah, sure, the other one's maybe gonna take a zone, but what's the rest of the front gonna do? The rest of the front, like I said, Stone Age. So, that's not ideal. So if you're facing DivMob, or any type of other division that's like that, play solid, and play for this as red, and the middle. Even though the middle doesn't offer that much of an advantage, you'd have to go for it, because that's just the way that these divisions play. For blue, it's just the other way around. So you go for India as blue, you go for India, and you go for the middle. And basically, this is the way that you want to do it, because India is worth 2 points, and, well, the back zone over here, if I turn it around, the back zone alpha is also worth, blue's back zone is worth 2 points. So you always want to locate that 2-pointer, and you want to focus on it if you're not comfortable with this kind of flank play. And if you're just comfortable with solid play, then you always go for the 2-pointer. It's kind of sad, again, like I said before, it's kind of sad to see that the middle zone is not the one that's worth the most, because that's kind of where you'd like to entice play, in my opinion. That's what makes a map most fun, is if its middle zone is a battle for, basically a battle to the death. It's like the middle zone decides the game. Perfect. Um, Flanks also work. Flanks are also fun, but when every game is just flank, well, that's not really that fun. So, yeah. So against divisions that are basically like DivMob or are DivMob, you go for more solid play. You always go for Alpha and Bravo. How would you do that? Well, I'd suggest, stacking. I'd say 70%, quite possibly, or 60. Let's say 60 if you're not comfortable with that much. Let's say 60% over here to the left side. You'd do what's it called? 30% over here in the middle. And then you'd do the last remaining 10% over here to defend this, just so that, because DivMob, like I said, will be split so much, it can attack everywhere. If you leave something open for DivMob, you're dead. You're just dead. You cannot leave anything open for divisions that play like DivMob or are DivMob. You cannot leave any doors open, because they're gonna come and bite you in the ass. I mean, either scimitar sneaking from any one of the divisions that gets insane scimitar or autocannon recon spam, or just millions of tanks in your backline, or millions of ADGMs in your backline. Any type of one of those divisions that can do that, and there are a lot of them, you cannot leave stuff open. So you're gonna have to spend that 10% just there to secure the front line, and be sure to not die and not lose the game like that. Because that's really the most annoying way to lose a game, is to just backlining or to a complete side flank. So you can't leave anything open. You'd have to spend that 10% there. For blue, basically the same thing applies. You'd want to go for 60% over here towards India, you go for 30% over here in Bravo, and you go for 10% lastly over here, just defending, not allowing any infiltration, so that you do not lose the game to this. Um, Now let's take a look at here. So basically, if I had to say, is it worth it to go for Echo? You can see here that in some games I do go for Echo, in some games I don't, depending on what's the situation. But you can see here that I am going for Echo because usually it's worth it, right? But if you get a division that can punish you quickly for overextending, definitely do not go to Echo. It's kind of weird that the way that they built this map, it's very long. Like the amount of like just the sheer mileage of the map, that it takes a toll on your vehicles, and DIVMOB does suffer when it comes to. I don't know if you checked out my DIVMOB video. I'll leave the link down into the description. You can check it. You can check it out. But basically, DIVMOB, all of its vehicles get very little fuel, and so DIVMOB on this map does not have a problem killing you, but will run out of fuel once it reaches your back line. So that's funny. So DIVMOB will, in the end, kind of like lose, right? But it will kill you anyways, right? Like, what's the point of DIVMOB running out of steam when you're dead? So, you know, that doesn't make much sense, but that's how it works. You can see here that I'm going for Echo. And I'm open to punishment here, so I'm not completely off the hook yet. As you can see here, these tanks can pick off a great deal of my tanks here, and that's kind of exactly what happens. I mean, they kill off literally everything that I have. This Serblinde didn't really want to smoke for some reason. This guy's also probably gonna die later on. My enemy should pull back these tanks, though. This map is pretty cool, like, right? It's not. I don't like it though. I don't like the map. If I have to be honest, if someone asks me, "Hey, do you enjoy DivMob?" Not DivMob, Omen, I'd say no. Omen for me is not that fun, to be fair. It's really not that fun. It's pretty eh. It kind of forces you to go everywhere, and that's just not a fun experience. It's just not a fun experience, the game telling you, hey, go literally everywhere, or else you might lose the fast divs, or try to counter fast divs as they're attacking you everywhere. It's kind of not fun, and it leads to a game that's just meh at best when it comes to quality. Well, that's it for today, Commanders. If this video helped you out, please make sure to leave a like down below and consider subscribing. It helps out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. See you in the next video, Commanders.